Hey guys, today I'll show you a psychological horror thriller TV series named Marianne. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a news report playing on the radio about a famous writer, Emma, who is preparing to conclude a horror novel titled Lizzie Lark. The host expresses disappointment, wondering why such a popular novel is coming to an abrupt end. Somewhere else, a girl named Caroline hears a strange noise coming from the kitchen. Upon investigating, she finds her mother using a knife to forcibly pry out her own teeth. The mother then instructs Caroline to give the teeth to Emma. The scene shifts to the author Emma, who is currently sharing the final chapter of her horror novel with her readers. The fans express regret, lamenting how the novel they've followed for so many years is suddenly ending. Emma explains that she started writing the novel when she first debuted, and now she wants to explore new themes and start afresh. At a subsequent book signing event, Caroline approaches Emma and asks if she recognizes her. After a moment, Emma realizes it's Caroline, her old classmate and friend whom she hasn't seen in 15 years. Caroline explains that her mother sent her. She has read Emma's horror novel dozens of times. Emma is surprised that Caroline's mom is one of her biggest fans. But Caroline continues, revealing that her mother is ill and has harmed her father. Most disturbingly, her mother claims she is Marianne, the terrifying character from Emma's novel. Emma is bewildered. Marianne is just a fictional character she made up. But Caroline insists that Emma knows the truth. Caroline then pulls out a bundle and throws it in front of Emma, telling her to open it. Reluctantly, Emma unwraps the bundle, only to find a piece of human skin containing 2 teeth and a lock of hair. Caroline accuses Emma of being at fault and lifts her shirt to reveal the scars from her mother's torment. It turns out that every night her mother would appear at her door with a smile, waiting for Caroline to fall asleep, only to torture her with a knife. Soon after, a crazed Caroline is escorted away by security. Shaken by the events at the book signing, Emma goes to a bar that night with her assistant to relax. The assistant is curious about what Caroline said and asks Emma about the nightmares she had mentioned. Emma explains that as a child, she had recurring nightmares in which an evil spirit named Marianne would appear. To cope, Emma started writing her novel, creating the character Lizzie Lark to fight against Marianne. Since then, she hadn't had any nightmares about Marianne, until now, just after announcing the end of her series. Later that night, Emma returns home and lies down to rest. Her boyfriend is already asleep. In the middle of the night, the bedroom door suddenly opens and a shadowy figure slowly approaches. Panicked, Emma tries to wake her boyfriend, but he doesn't respond. Suddenly, the shadowy figure rushes into the room and her boyfriend disappears. At that moment, a hand reaches out from under the bed and Emma jolts awake. It was just a dream, bone dry but not wet. She's tense, having not had such a nightmare in a long time. Her boyfriend mutters that it serves her right. At first, Emma doesn't think much of it and calls out to her boyfriend saying she's scared, but his response raises her suspicions. Feeling a strange premonition, she avoids looking at him directly, muttering to herself that she must wake up from the dream. However, before she can react, her boyfriend forcibly turns her head towards him, revealing Caroline's mother, Madame d'Ogeron, who appears with a chilling smile, asking her to come back to see Marianne. Once again, it was still a dream, bone dry but not wet. The next day, Emma wakes up to find her boyfriend already gone. She has no choice but to face the day and head to work. The assistant informs Emma that the crazy woman from yesterday's book signing is here again. She came really early and they couldn't stop her. At that moment, Caroline spots Emma from upstairs and shouts her name. She climbs over the railing, places a noose around her neck, and loudly warns Emma if Marianne wants her to keep writing, and that after she takes her life, Marianne will come for Emma's parents too. Caroline also mentions the Lighthouse, saying it all started there. Something clicks in Emma's mind, and she urgently pleads with Caroline to come down, but Caroline drops a crucifix necklace, telling Emma to take it to her mother and then jumps. The crowd is stunned. After this terrifying experience, Emma decides she needs to go back and see for herself. The next morning, her assistant drives her back to her hometown, a seaside village called Elden. On the way, Emma repeatedly tries to call her parents, but they don't answer. Even when she asks a neighbor to check on them, no one is home. This worries Emma. The assistant, who has been working for Emma for only 6 months, admits that she's too scared to read Emma's horror novels. Emma begins to explain the main evil spirit in her novels, Marianne. She has no physical form, she floats around and possesses people's bodies, invading their souls. The key to recognizing someone possessed by Marianne is simple. Just ask directly if they are Marianne. Curious, the assistant asks if Marianne is so powerful, how did the story's protagonist Lizzie defeat her? To the assistant's surprise, Emma replies that Lizzie had died. Soon they arrive in town Elden. The first person Emma encounters is the town's bearded priest and his angry dog, who are not pleased to see her return. He keeps bringing up things that happened 15 years ago, urging Emma to take care of her business quickly and leave. Emma, not intending to stay long, exchanges arguments with the priest rather than hormones before heading with her assistant to Caroline's house. Madame d'Ogeron answers the door and she's overjoyed to see Emma. It seems her daughter's death doesn't affect her much. Inside, Emma notices that the house is filled with copies of her novels. She hands Caroline's crucifix necklace to Madame d'Ogeron, who shows little interest in her daughter's last possession. Instead, she's keen to discuss Emma's books, showing a disturbing enthusiasm. To ease the tension, Emma offers to sign a book for her. When she asks whom to make it out to, the old woman says, "To Marianne." She warns Emma to keep writing, or her nightmares will never end, before suddenly wetting herself. Terrified, Emma and her assistant flee the house, but Madame d'Ogeron follows them out, shouting at Emma to check on her parents, saying she's already visited them. She even threatens to visit Emma's other loved ones if she doesn't continue writing. It's clear now that Madame d'Ogeron is now possessed by Marianne. Emma is filled with dread and rushes back home with her assistant. As they arrive, they find a familiar package hanging from the doorknob, a skin-bound parcel identical to the one before. Emma quickly removes and discards it. The front door is unlocked and there's no answer when she knocks. Fear grips her, indicating that something terrible might have happened to her parents. Suddenly, she hears her mother's voice from upstairs. Emma hurries to the staircase only to find her parents, in broad daylight, engaged in a smelly hormone yoga session on the stairs. Fantastic, but too fast. The horrifying atmosphere quickly turns awkward. Emma is baffled by her parents' recent behavior. When she mentions she had trouble reaching them over the weekend, they explain they were out of town. Now that they're back, her mother insists Emma stay the night, especially since Caroline's funeral is on Tuesday. Later that night, Emma and her assistant share a room. In the middle of the night, the assistant gets up to use the bathroom. Terrified, she makes her way to the upstairs restroom. While she's inside, she hears strange noises. Someone is jiggling the doorknob. After the sounds stop, she cautiously opens the door to investigate. To her horror, she sees Emma's mother, completely naked, wandering downstairs. The mother then walks to the door and begins to vomit. Suddenly, Emma's father rushes in, knocking the assistant down. His back is covered in blood with strange symbols carved into it. He slaps the assistant, telling her that this isn't them. As the assistant stands there in shock, Emma's mother grabs her father, and they leave the house. The commotion wakes Emma. When she comes downstairs, she finds only her assistant, petrified on the floor. Her parents are gone, hand in hand, walking into the dark woods, their faces twisted with eerie smiles. Emma calls after them, but they don't respond. Chasing after them, Emma suddenly finds her father standing behind her, seeming to be under some evil influence. He shouts for her to keep writing the story. The shock is too much, and Emma faints. On another note, the terrified assistant was left behind in the house. Because Emma's parents had a security system installed, the alarm kept blaring non-stop. The assistant searched the house, but everyone was gone, and the front door was wide open. Panic began to set in. Suddenly, the alarm stopped, and the phone rang. It was the security company asking what had happened and reassuring her that the police had been notified. They advised the assistant to close the doors. But as she did, the voice on the other end of the line eerily told her to turn around. With trembling hands, she turned to find Madame d'Ogeron standing in the corner, staring at her. The assistant was petrified, but luckily, Emma arrived just in time, calming her down. The next morning, Emma spent the previous night in the woods, hitting her head and failing to find her parents. The assistant, still shaken, wondered if Madame d'Ogeron she saw was just a hallucination. After some discussion, Emma concluded that everything must be connected to the old woman, suspecting she might have drugged her parents, perhaps using some kind of hallucinogenic substance, like a cult. Meanwhile, the town's detective, Samuel, responded to Emma's call. Being a fan of Emma's work, he rushed over as soon as he learned it was her. During the investigation, Samuel noticed the skin-bound package hanging on the door. Emma was puzzled since she had thrown it away the day before. Samuel quickly recognized it as an evil artifact, just like the one in Emma's horror novel. Not just similar, identical. Emma insisted that Madame d'Ogeron was behind it all, but with insufficient evidence, Samuel couldn't immediately investigate her. He decided to take the item with him and said he'd look into it. Before leaving, Samuel pulled out several books, asking Emma for her autograph. Emma agreed but made a deal. If Samuel questioned Madame d'Ogeron, she'd not only sign the books but also add a personalized message. He agreed, but warned Emma to stay at home while he conducted his investigation. Of course, Emma had no intention of staying put. As soon as Samuel left, she and her assistant headed to Madame d'Ogeron's house to keep an eye on her. When the old woman went out, they snuck inside. In one of the drawers, Emma found a photo of her friend Caroline, eerily resembling how she looked on the day she hanged herself. Deeper in the drawer, there was also a photo of Emma and Caroline from their school days. Emma noticed a reflection in the glass of the photo. It seemed like a shadowy figure was moving behind her, but when she turned around, there was nothing. They also discovered a locked door, the only room in the house they hadn't seen. The assistant smelled something rotten coming from the other side, and it sounded like something was moving behind the door. Suddenly, whatever it was began banging against the door and rattling the handle. Despite their fear, Emma and her assistant decided to break the door open. Just as they were about to do it, Madame d'Ogeron returned, appearing behind them. She asked if they were curious about what was inside, saying that the room only contained a cat and some teeth. But clearly a cat couldn't be turning the door handle. With something trying to break out of the room and the old woman acting increasingly strange, Emma and her assistant were at a loss. Then, Madame d'Ogeron did something even more horrifying. She suddenly produced a knife and started cutting into her own arm, saying what people would believe if people found out they broke into her house and she was injured. Emma begged her to stop, but she insisted that Emma must continue her novel where Lizzie and Marianne must face each other again. She threatened that Emma, her parents, and even herself would be in danger if she didn't comply. She also promised to come back if Emma refused. At this point, it was clear that Madame d'Ogeron was possessed by the demon. Turning to Samuel, Emma had signed his books with a special message, promising to write him into her next novel as a heroic character who saves the protagonist, if he could find her parents safe and sound. Motivated, Samuel visited an antique dealer friend to have the skin-bound item from Emma's house examined. The friend reacted with alarm, warning that the item was incredibly dangerous. It was a kind of amplifier for evil curses, increasing the negative energy around it and making people more susceptible to demonic influence. If someone wanted to curse a person, they'd place this item nearby. Samuel decided to take the item with him and grabbed a crucifix necklace as well. But his friend warned that the crucifix wouldn't help. The people involved with this thing were in serious trouble, already cursed. The scene shifts back to Emma, who, feeling lost, heads to the seaside to drink alone. There, she unexpectedly runs into her old classmate, Aori. After all these years, Aurori's reaction is not one of surprise or joy, but rather a hint of reluctance, similar to the priest's attitude in the last episode. Emma tries to lighten the mood by joking that Aori is still mad at her about what happened at the Lighthouse 15 years ago. Aori doesn't respond to the joke, and instead asks Emma if she'll be attending Caroline's funeral, noting that Emma was reportedly the last person to see Caroline before she died. Emma hesitates and says she probably won't attend because she plans to visit her parents. Aori doesn't push further, simply saying they should stay in touch. Back home, Emma notices her assistant pacing back and forth in the living room, busy on the phone, discussing work matters. At first, Emma doesn't think much of it, but suddenly, the assistant vanishes mid-stride. The atmosphere in the room quickly turns eerie. Emma notices that her glass now inexplicably contains strands of hair and teeth spinning around inside. Her parents, crawling on the floor, beg her to continue writing her novel, threatening that more people will be hurt if she doesn't. Confused, Emma asks who they mean, and her father points to the corner of the room where the malevolent spirit Marianne from her novel stands. Emma insists that she can't continue writing because she already killed off the protagonist, Lizzie Lark, a sort of demon-hunting detective whose nemesis is the medieval witch, Marianne. Suddenly, Marianne lunges at her, and as Emma turns, she's startled by a hallucination of her father. She's pulled deeper into the vision, where she sees a hole in the ground, from which a nursery rhyme echoes saying Marianne was buried on Monday and born on Tuesday. The rhyme repeats in an endless loop. Curious, Emma peers into the hole like a peeping Tom and sees Madame d'Ogeron inside, still pressuring her to continue the story, demanding she start writing by Tuesday, or else she'll kill her. The scene then shifts to the town, where a child is poking at a dead crow on the ground. Madame d'Ogeron drives by, stops, and scares the annoying child away, then spits into the crow's eye. In the car, Emma sits in the passenger seat, still skeptical that Madame d'Ogeron is actually Marianne. She just wants her parents back, and dismisses the previous night's events as insomnia-induced hallucinations. The old woman, with a sinister smile, offers to take Emma somewhere. They arrive at the town's church where Caroline's funeral is taking place. Emma's old school friends are all there. Madame d'Ogeron leads Emma to Caroline's body and, disturbingly, spits on her daughter's forehead, an act only Emma seems to witness. Unable to bear it, Emma runs out of the church with her friends following. Aori, surprised that Emma came to the funeral after all, expresses relief. Some friendships, even after years apart, still feel familiar when reunited. As they reminisce over drinks, Emma's assistant joins them. The group of friends, which once included Emma, Caroline, Aori, a guy nicknamed Sebi, and another called Tonio, shares stories from their childhood. Sebi recounts some of Emma's embarrassing childhood moments, and as she listens, Emma is flooded with memories. Time flies, and before long, everyone heads home. Curious, the assistant later asks Emma about the childhood stories Sebi mentioned, including an article Emma once wrote criticizing her mother. At the time, Emma felt her parents were too controlling, stifling her freedom, but now, with her parents missing, she finally understands the deep concern and responsibility that comes with family. The recent events replay in her mind, causing her to wonder if Madame d'Ogeron's words are true and if Marianne is really back. On a hunch, Emma opens her laptop and begins to write again, continuing the story of Lizzie Lark with a new chapter, Renaissance. Although Lizzie Lark was killed off in the previous story, the sequel opens with a character named Lillian, who drowns 5 cows and hangs 5 children under a lighthouse, reviving Lizzie Lark through these sacrifices to continue the fight against the evil spirit Marianne. As Emma writes, it seems the possessed Madame d'Ogeron gains a mysterious power in the real world. The next morning, Emma's mother actually returns home, but she's covered in scars with strange symbols carved into the skin on her stomach. She stares blankly ahead, seemingly in a daze, and only she returns. Emma's father is still missing. The scene shifts to Emma's old classmate, Tonio, who is working with another friend, Arno. Tonio once had feelings for Emma, though they never ended up together. Now that Emma is back in town, Arno teases him about it. As they chat and pull up crab traps from the sea, Tonio suddenly feels something strange. To his horror, he discovers the bodies of 5 cows, eerily matching what Emma wrote the previous night. It doesn't take long for news of the drowned cows to spread throughout the small town. The priest arrives at the scene to investigate. Using his sensitive beard, he senses that something ominous is unfolding. Back at the church, he notices that Emma's horror novel has been updated, and to his shock, the events in the book mirror what's happening in the town. At Emma's place, after writing the first chapter of the sequel the previous night, Emma uploaded it to the website. The next morning, her mother returned home, but she was expressionless and immediately locked herself in her room, refusing to speak. Both Emma and her assistant are bewildered. They try to get her mother to open the door, but she won't respond. Left with no other option, they call in Detective Samuel. When questioned, Emma's mother starts to complain, accusing Emma of destroying the love between parents and their child and of having the power to ruin everything good around her. Emma tries to apologize, but her mother refuses to accept it. Feeling down, Emma takes her assistant to the beach for some drinks. After a while, she receives a call from her friend Sebi, who invites her over for dinner. The assistant feels this might not be the best time, but Emma disagrees. With her father still missing and her mother back but rejecting her, she doesn't know what else to do. She decides it's a good opportunity to catch up with Sebi. The assistant reminds Emma that Sebi is now married. Emma shrugs it off, saying it's the perfect time to test his marriage. They head over to Sebi's house, where his pregnant wife greets them at the door. It's worth noting that Emma and Sebi once had a relationship, but after Emma left town, they lost touch, and Sebi eventually married someone else. However, the child his wife is carrying is from her previous marriage. The family warmly welcomes Emma and her assistant, but things take a turn when Emma starts making subtle digs at Sebi during dinner. She shows no respect towards his wife, even going as far as to imply that Sebi might not be the father of her unborn child. The atmosphere quickly becomes tense. This is typical of Emma. She often disregards the feelings of others. Later, when Sebi steps into the garage to get more drinks, Emma follows him, using the opportunity to chat him up with flirtatious remarks, even hinting at rekindling their hormone-smelly past. Sebi, taken aback that Emma hasn't changed after 15 years, firmly rejects her hormone advances. Just as they're talking, Sebi's wife suddenly screams that their son is missing. As shown in the plot from Emma's novel, Lizzie Lark's resurrection required the sacrifice of 5 cows and 5 children. Now it seems that the latter part of the story is coming true. In the town, 5 children are seen walking towards the lighthouse, holding ropes and chanting a nursery rhyme about Marianne. Emma, Sebi, and his wife frantically search the town for the missing children. Sebi mentions how strange the town has been today. 5 cows were found drowned in the sea earlier. He has no clues about why cows would suddenly decide to drown themselves. Apparently not everyone in town is keeping up with Emma's novel. At that moment, it hits Emma that the events in her novel might be becoming reality. The children might be in danger, possibly at the lighthouse. Sure enough, they find the 5 children at the lighthouse, ready to hang themselves. Luckily, Sebi and the others arrive just in time to save them. After so many terrifying and nerve-wracking events, the assistant is at her breaking point. She never expected the town to be filled with such eerie and horrifying occurrences. She starts to wonder if she'll even make it out alive at this rate. With that in mind, she decides it might be best to quit. Emma, of course, doesn't want her to leave. The assistant is the only person she can talk to. But even Emma can't deny that the events in her novel seem to be coming true in real life. The assistant, resolute, tells Emma to find someone more capable of helping her and drives off, leaving Emma to face the unfolding nightmare alone. With no other options, Emma returned home alone. Her mother was resting on the couch. Detective Samuel had left a message for Emma, informing her that he had already checked on her mother's condition and treated the wounds. There was nothing seriously wrong. The next morning, Emma's mother woke up to find Emma sleeping beside her. She fell into deep thought, remembering the things she had said to Emma before. She apologized, explaining that she had been out of control at the time and had vented all her frustrations. However, she had no memory of where she and Emma's father had gone that night. In a haze, the mother recalled hearing voices, which she began to recount to Emma. As she spoke, Emma started to sense something was off. The words sounded familiar. It was from her own novel. Emma quickly found the passage, which was from the Exorcism chapter. Emma then realized that if her novel's protagonist, Lizzie, could exorcise an evil spirit, perhaps she could too. She sneaked into the church, stole some holy water and a crucifix, and prepared to confront the evil spirit head-on. Emma tracked down Madame d'Ogeron, possessed by Marianne. She knocked her out with the crucifix, tied her to a chair, and began performing an exorcism just like in her novel. Marianne, speaking through Madame d'Ogeron, reminded Emma that she had promised to release her mother if Emma started writing again by Tuesday. Now that her mother was free, Marianne offered to release her father if Emma continued to write. But Emma refused to give in. She poured holy tap water over Marianne's head and pressed the crucifix against her. Marianne screamed in pain, and in a chicken voice, taunting Emma with words meant to provoke her. She even brought up the incident at the Lighthouse 15 years ago, accusing Emma of being a murderer who had stood by and watched. Enraged, Emma found that neither the holy tap water nor the crucifix was effective. They only led to more humiliation from Marianne. In her anger, Emma struck Madame d'Ogeron with a stick. At that moment, Emma's phone rang. It was the sheriff. He had found her father. Rushing to the hospital, Emma found her father still unconscious. Samuel explained what had happened. Earlier, when he had questioned Emma's mother at her home, he noticed something strange on her shoes, a synthetic chemical that was only stored in an old, abandoned lab in town. Following this lead, Samuel went to the lab and eventually found Emma's father in one of the rooms. He was on his knees, unable to move, with cursed skin-bound pouches hanging from the ceiling above him. Considering that even one of these items could drive a person mad and make them more susceptible to curses, the number of pouches surrounding her father had left him completely helpless. Now that Emma's father had been found and her mother had returned, Samuel felt he had fulfilled his promise. Emma planned to return home and tell her mother everything, while Samuel stayed at the hospital to wait for her father to wake up. Emma's mood was cautiously optimistic as she arrived home, but she quickly realized that the ordeal was far from over. Blood was trickling down the steps. Inside, she found her mother dead like a piece of soap in a pool of blood. It was clear that Marianne was behind it. Before Emma could even process her grief, she heard Madame d'Ogeron's eerie laughter coming from upstairs. Emma followed the sound to the second floor, where she found the old woman sitting in a doorway, laughing with a knife in hand. Enraged, Emma grabbed her by the chicken throat and began to strangle her. Just as she was about to kill her, Emma's assistant rushed back to the house. The assistant had originally left, but returned after receiving a call from the publisher, questioning why Emma had uploaded the new chapters of her novel online for free without the company's permission. Unable to shake her concern for Emma, she returned to town. She had seen the blood on the steps and hurried upstairs just in time to stop Emma. The assistant tried to administer first aid to Madame d'Ogeron, but the next moment, she was thrown down the stairs like a giant Barbie toy as a cloud of mist emerged from the old woman's stinky mouth. Marianne then told Emma that killing Madame d'Ogeron wouldn't help. If the old woman died, Marianne would simply possess someone else. The mist from Madame d'Ogeron's mouth appeared to be Marianne's true form. A few weeks later, Emma's assistant is still in a coma. Emma sits in the hospital room, crying between her comatose father and assistant. Her friends come to comfort her. Their presence helps Emma find some peace, but the evil spirit Marianne has not left. As Emma washes her face in the bathroom, the mirror suddenly displays the words telling her to keep writing. Marianne is relentless in her demands. Detective Samuel visits Emma, though today is her mother's funeral because the police still need her cooperation for their investigation. Madame d'Ogeron didn't die from Emma's attack. She's currently under surveillance and treatment, charged with attempted murder. Now that she's regained consciousness, she has requested to see Emma, claiming that she is no longer possessed by Marianne. It turns out that when Emma was strangling her, she nearly killed her, which forced Marianne to leave her body. But Marianne didn't leave empty-handed. She took Madame d'Ogeron's eyesight with her. Samuel explains that the old woman's optic nerves appear to have been forcibly removed, though she insists it was Marianne's doing. Emma follows Samuel to meet Madame d'Ogeron, whose appearance now resembles the fleeting image of Marianne seen by the assistant previously, with her eyes completely covered. The old woman apologizes, explaining that all the horrible things were done under Marianne's control. Not only did she harm her daughter Caroline, but she also hurt her husband. She reveals that Marianne is not entirely a fictional character from Emma's novel. There was a real Marianne long ago. She has re-emerged because of some deep connection between her and Emma. Marianne is lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to possess someone again. Madame d'Ogeron warns Emma that if Marianne demands she continues writing, she must comply, or more tragedies will follow. Afterwards, Emma asks Samuel if he thinks they're crazy. Samuel, withholding judgment until he fully understands the situation, tells her they need to investigate further to uncover the truth. He advises Emma to stay at home and not comply with any of Marianne's demands, while he tries to figure out who Marianne might possess next. After that, Samuel led the police to Madame d'Ogeron's house. She had mentioned that Marianne also harmed her husband. They turned their attention to the locked room Emma found earlier. The police open it, and the stench is overwhelming. The walls are covered in strange, bloody symbols, and in the center of the room sits a man. It's Madame d'Ogeron's husband. His head is surrounded by those cursed skin-bound pouches, the same items used to suppress his mind. Naturally, one might wonder where all this human skin came from. The answer is gruesome. Caroline's father had large patches of skin removed from his body, and his unbrushed dark teeth had been pried out. Marianne had turned him into a living tool, harvesting materials from him as needed. Despite everything, the man is still alive. Samuel also finds a book filled with various evil runes in the room. He immediately takes it to his antique dealer friend. When the friend sees Samuel, he tries to close the door, having suffered nothing but bad luck since the last time Samuel brought the cursed pouch into his shop. But Samuel pushes the book through the gate, and the friend reluctantly agrees to take a look. The book details witchcraft and demonic sigils used by witches long ago, right in this area. The friend suggests that Samuel might find records of witch trials at the church, which could provide more clues. He also warns Samuel never to submit to the witch's demands, as witches are full of lies and deceit. Only by identifying which witch the sigil belongs to can they gain the power to suppress her. With this important clue, Samuel heads to the town church. He tells the priest he needs to see the records of the witch trials. In truth, Samuel had already stolen the records, having picked the lock while the priest was away. As he's about to leave, the priest returns and catches him, but Samuel makes a quick escape with the records. That night, Samuel returns to his friend's shop, announcing that he found the records. His friend, though reluctant, helps him identify the origin of the demonic sigil. It's used to seal the demon king, Belith, who commands 85 legions of demons in hell. The friend urges Samuel to stay out of this mess, fearing it will end in death. He even has a bad feeling this might be the last time they see each other. Samuel thanks him, and they share a somber farewell. Back to Emma. She's furious after seeing another message in her bathroom mirror and angrily writes, "Go to hell," in response. Just then, she gets a call asking her to come to the hospital. Sebi's wife is in labor. In the hospital, she saw a dark creature emerging from Sebi's wife during childbirth, shocking everyone. But it's just a dream, and the awakened Emma does receive the same call from her friend, telling her that Sebi's wife is in labor. Emma reluctantly goes, still shaken by a nightmare. The dream was so vivid that Emma fears something might be wrong with the baby. When Emma arrives at the hospital, her friends are waiting outside the delivery room. She tries to convince them to let her inside, but Aori asks if she's overreacting, just like she used to in the past. As Emma is about to rush in, Sebi comes out, overjoyed, and announces that both mother and baby are healthy. Relieved, Emma decides not to mention her concerns. Detective Samuel, after obtaining the trial records, carefully read through them. Among the records, he found detailed accounts of the witch Marianne's trial. Marianne was born in 1587. On her 7th birthday, her house caught fire, and while Marianne and her cat escaped, everyone else in her family perished. After that, Marianne was raised by nuns from the church. Over the next 2 years, a plague struck the convent, leaving Marianne and her beloved cat as the only survivors. At 16, Marianne married a bell ringer and had a son. When the child was just 3 months old, he tragically died after his cradle was placed too close to the fireplace. Marianne later gave birth to 2 more children. On one winter solstice night, she took them into the forest. Rumor had it that they were not alone in the woods. Something else was there. When Marianne returned home, she was alone. Eventually, Marianne slit her husband's throat. It was said that she had sacrificed her children and husband to marry the demon king, Beleth, who was also known as the King of Cats. The church went to great lengths to capture and execute Marianne by hanging. Before her death, she cursed the town, vowing to return and take the townspeople's children, dragging them to hell. Marianne never left empty-handed. After her execution, the church burned and buried her sexy body. As Samuel finished reading, a chill ran down his spine to his smelly butt. It seemed that Marianne was not just a character Emma had invented, but a real person whose story Emma had unwittingly woven into her novel. The scene shifts to Emma. She's at the hospital visiting her comatose father and assistant. Her friend Aori comes by to check on them, and the two reminisce about the past. Aori mentions her late sister Lucy and reassures Emma not to blame herself. After all, 15 years have passed since the incident. After Lucy's death, Emma's parents often helped Aurori's family, and it was thanks to them that Aori was able to move on from the loss. The two friends talk about old times, finding some closure in the process. That night, Emma returns home but can't sleep. As she lies in bed, she hears someone calling her name. When she sits up to look around, the eerie occurrences escalate. It's Marianne, now blind, appearing before her, terrifying Emma into screaming. Marianne covers Emma's stinky mouth and whispers in a soft chicken voice that if she won't write, then let them play hide and seek. But it's not just Emma. Her friends are also experiencing strange events. First, Tonio is at the port, working, when he starts feeling like something is watching him. He hears footsteps approaching, getting closer and closer, but when he turns around, there's nothing there, until whatever it is draws nearer. Then, Aori hears her deceased sister Lucy's voice coming from under her bed while she's trying to sleep. Looking under the bed, she sees a shadow and assumes it's a hallucination, just a nightmare. But the voice says life has become a nightmare, and it's all because of her and Emma. Lastly, Sebi is at the hospital where his newborn is being kept. Suddenly, the night's surveillance footage begins to flicker. A woman in a hospital gown is seen walking into the nursery, moving across the screens from Emma's father's room. The nurse hears the baby crying, and when Sebi and the nurse rush into the nursery, the crying suddenly stops. They lift the blanket only to find that the baby is gone, replaced by one of those cursed, skin-bound pouches. Up until now, Detective Samuel has uncovered Marianne's history, revealing her to be a cursed figure, bringing death to all those around her. As is learned in the first episode, Emma started writing about Marianne because of recurring nightmares she had as a child. So she created Lizzie to fight Marianne. But while Lizzie was her own creation, Marianne was not. She was a real witch. The scene shifts to Emma turning to see a girl huddled in the corner. Gathering her courage, she asks if she's Marianne, but the girl responds her name is Emma and then asks who she is. Emma doesn't answer, but instead gives a creepy smile just like Marianne's and suddenly grabs the girl by the throat, causing the girl to jolt awake from the nightmare and wet her bed. Time flashes back to 15 years ago, and the girl turns out to be a young Emma. Back then, Emma frequently had nightmares and often wet the bed. Her mother, accustomed to this, would help her clean up without complaint. In this flashback, we meet a teenage Aori who was quite the rebellious girl with a hairstyle that was edgy and bold. The girl with the tape on her nose is Caroline, and their close friends Tonio and Sebi complete the group. This was the town's non-conformist clique. One day, Emma is talking to her friends about her recurring nightmares. At that time, Emma didn't fully understand them. She only knew that every night a witch-like entity would chase her. This entity, which seemed to possess the people she loved, was named Marianne. Upon hearing this, Caroline has a bold idea. She suggests that if they know the evil spirit's name, they can summon her. The others are skeptical, preferring to take a more scientific approach, but Caroline is adamant. As a devout Catholic, she believes there are many things in the world that science cannot explain. If this Marianne keeps appearing in Emma's nightmares, she must exist. If they can summon her, perhaps they can convince her to leave Emma alone. Caroline then pulls out a Ouija board. Aori, however, isn't interested and decides to back out. Emma later approaches Aori to discuss it, admitting that she doesn't really believe in ghosts or spirits either, but finds Caroline's idea intriguing. Maybe this seance could have a psychological effect and help her stop wetting the bed. Emma, who has been dating Tonio for 3 months, has been hesitant to sleep with him because of her fear of wetting the bed at night, which could lead to embarrassment. While they're talking, Aurori's younger sister Lucy overhears them. She teases Emma about wetting the bed, claiming she stopped wetting the bed 4 years ago, and playfully snatches Emma's pager. Seeing how eager Emma and her friends are to conduct the seance, Aori reluctantly agrees to participate, but only after she spends some time with her sister. That night, the 5 friends sneak into the school. This is the same place where the 5 children were found hanging in a previous episode, next to the Lighthouse, a location repeatedly mentioned as significant in the story's references to the events 15 years ago. Before entering the school, Caroline explains the rules of the seance. For the next hour, they must remain silent, not joke around, and never leave their seats until the seance is over, or they could be in danger. The friends enter the classroom, which looks exactly like the one from Emma's earlier dream. They move the desks aside and sit in a circle in the center of the room. Caroline reiterates the importance of following the rules. No talking, no laughing, and everyone must keep their eyes closed until she says it's safe to open them. Most importantly, no one should leave their seat before the seance is finished. Caroline begins the seance, leading the group in summoning Marianne. But Emma, as stubborn as ever, repeatedly breaks the rules by peeking despite Caroline's warnings not to open their eyes. With each of Caroline's 3 calls, Marianne actually appears behind her. Emma sees the cabinet door slowly open, gets startled, and screams, breaking the circle by letting go of her friend's hands, thus interrupting the seance. Caroline is exasperated and reminds Emma that they were supposed to stay silent. The others look in the direction Emma is pointing, but see nothing. Sebi stands up to close the cabinet door, wondering why everyone is so tense. In doing so, he forgets Caroline's warning not to leave their seats before the seance is over. At that moment, something strange happens behind the door. Emma points again, and suddenly, she becomes possessed by the evil spirit. She starts cursing her friends, terrifying them. Now they start to believe something supernatural might be happening, but not for long. Emma soon snaps out of it, but Aori is furious. She accuses Emma of playing a cruel prank and says she only participated to help Emma. Aori refuses to believe in ghosts and calls Emma a liar. The friends leave in a huff, their once close bond shattered. After this incident, Aori distanced herself from Emma and they haven't spoken since. On this day, Emma sought out Aurori's sister Lucy, hoping that by taking her home, she could strike up a conversation with Aori and possibly mend their friendship. Lucy, being as mischievous as ever, snatched Emma's pager and used it to play hide-and-seek. She told Emma that if she found her, she'd agree to talk to her sister. Lucy darted around, hiding in various places until she finally jumped into a freezer. Unfortunately, when the freezer door closed, the latch outside also locked shut. Emma searched for Lucy and could have found her, but strangely, another figure resembling Lucy appeared in the hallway behind her and quickly ran into a classroom. Believing Lucy had gone back inside, Emma didn't check the freezer and instead chased after the figure into the classroom. However, the Lucy she saw crawling under the desk a moment ago suddenly transformed into her toy monkey when Emma looked again. Behind a cabinet in the classroom, a human foot appeared, and the cabinet door slowly began to open. This was the same classroom where Emma and her friends had played the seance that fateful night. Meanwhile, inside the freezer, Lucy began to panic when she realized Emma hadn't come to find her. She tried to push the freezer door open but couldn't because the latch was locked from the outside. Inside the freezer, Marianne's voice whispered, "You are mine." Back in the classroom, Emma, gathering her courage, checked behind the cabinet but found nothing. Just then, she heard a sound coming from the blackboard as if someone was writing on it. The board slowly rotated, revealing a horrifying scene of Lucy trapped inside the freezer. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Emma rushed to the freezer. But by the time she opened it, Lucy had already been attacked by Marianne and was dead, her body lifeless and grotesque. The tragic news of Lucy's death spread quickly through the town, reaching Aori's family. Emma was consumed with guilt and terror, throwing the toy monkey into the sea. That night, as Emma's parents discussed Lucy's death, the police and school concluded that Lucy had died because she'd locked herself in the freezer while playing. But Emma knew the truth. This was all connected to Marianne. In a daze, Emma saw the toy monkey she had thrown into the sea reappear at her bedside. When she turned around, Lucy's ghost was crawling onto her bed. Terrified, Emma pulled the blanket over the ghost, only to fall off the bed and cower in a corner. The ghost, covered by the blanket, slowly stood up and began moving towards her. This wasn't just a nightmare. Emma was genuinely encountering a ghost, though it seemed more like Marianne than Lucy. Overwhelmed with fear and guilt, Emma went to the church to confess. She told the priest about the events leading up to Lucy's death and all the terrifying things she had experienced since. The priest listened and then told Emma that their town had a church because in dark places there were things that wanted to defy God, and that what she and her friends summoned is real and it's connected to her. What's worse, that evil presence has been drawn to her and will fulfill its promise to take her loved ones away. If she wants to save them, she must leave the town. The farther, the better. But Emma was unsure how she could leave when her parents would never agree. The priest suggested she make them hate her, severing the emotional bonds between them. This way, the evil spirit would be less likely to harm them. From that day on, Emma became extremely rebellious. She wrote a scathing article about her mother in the school newspaper, drank excessively, caused trouble around town, and even vandalized the church, decapitating the statue of Jesus. She successfully became the town's enemy. Her parents, left with no other choice, sent her to a boarding school hundreds of miles away. On the day Emma left town, her mother accompanied her. Her mother never understood what she had done wrong to make Emma act out so badly. Emma maintained a rebellious and ungrateful attitude. This planted the seed of a deep rift between mother and daughter. The only friend who came to see her off was Sebi, who sensed that something was wrong with Emma's sudden change in behavior but didn't know what. Before she left, he confessed his feelings for her, and they shared a farewell kiss. This explains why Emma later claimed that Sebi loved her. After moving to her new location, Emma began writing her novel about Marianne. She often had nightmares and created the character Lizzie Lark to fight against Marianne. This is what happened 15 years ago. Back to the present, Emma told Detective Samuel everything. She suddenly realized why Marianne had been pushing her to continue writing about her. Marianne had been using her all along. Emma also remembered the creature she saw in her dream, the one in the delivery room, and suspected it was connected to Marianne. As they talked, Sebi arrived, telling them that Marianne had taken his newborn child. The three then begin discussing how to deal with Marianne. The problem is they have no idea where Marianne is, let alone how to kill her. And since Marianne is a ghost, how can they even hope to kill a ghost? Detective Samuel had spent the previous days meticulously reviewing Emma's novels about Marianne. He noticed that certain events in the sequels had manifested in reality, like the sacrifice of 5 cows and 5 children. But what they hadn't realized before was that many events from the earlier novels had also come true. For instance, in chapter 16 of the first book, a mother drowns her child. Shortly after the book was published in France, a real-life case surfaced where a mother drowned her child under eerily similar circumstances, with the names in the case matching those in the novel. In the second book, there's a scene where Marianne possesses a polar bear and attacks a crowd. Not long after the novel was released in Russia, a bear attacked a basketball team, with the sole survivor claiming the bear spoke to them. In the third book, a child sleepwalks and kills their parents. When the book was published in South Korea, a similar incident occurred. Upon realizing this, the obvious question arises: if Emma's writing can become reality, why not write Marianne's death into the novel? Sebi suggests this exact idea, proposing that Emma write Marianne into returning his child and then kill her off. Emma, thinking this is a great idea, immediately starts writing. Detective Samuel warns her that it's not that simple, saying she's not some magical storyteller who can control reality and that she's dealing with a witch's spirit. It's best not to write anything until they know where Marianne is and how to confront her. But Emma ignores his advice and starts typing away with Sebi's input. However, Marianne had anticipated this. The lights suddenly go out, and Emma feels as though she's been transported to another dimension. Samuel and Sebi stand frozen in place. When Emma snaps out of it, she finds that she's unwittingly written a passage describing the exact events of her dream. Realizing the futility of her plan, Emma abandons the idea of writing Marianne's death into the story. She finally decides to follow Detective Samuel's plan to perform another seance. The next day, Emma and Samuel prepare to leave for the seance. Emma insists that Sebi go home to take care of his wife, who just gave birth. When Emma and Samuel arrive near the lighthouse, they find it abandoned due to the tragic events of the past. As they discuss the next steps, they see Sebi arriving with Aori and Arno, ready to help. Tonio had been attacked by Marianne at the port the previous night and is now missing. With Aori's sister murdered and Sebi's child taken, they're determined to face the evil spirit together, forming a new 5-person team. The group reaches the Lighthouse School as night falls, returning to the same classroom from 15 years ago. The long-abandoned classroom is even more eerie and foreboding. They move the desks aside and set up for the seance. Samuel's plan is to summon Marianne again and use runes to weaken her powers, forcing her to reveal where she has hidden the child. They've also brought the priest's dog to serve as a vessel for Marianne, trapping her in the dog's body so she can't harm anyone. Samuel, clearly having done his homework, has set up numerous temperature sensors around the seance area. According to his research, ghostly activity is often accompanied by a drop in temperature, which would alert them to Marianne's presence. It's clear Samuel has been thorough in his preparations. Once everything is ready, the seance begins. This time, it's much more professional than the one they conducted 15 years ago. Samuel repeatedly calls out to summon Marianne. As for Emma, it seems she hasn't learned from the past. She keeps peeking despite being told to keep her eyes closed. This time, Aori notices and nudges Emma to close her eyes again. But despite Samuel's repeated attempts, and even the dog barking a few times, Marianne doesn't appear. It seems that Marianne grew wiser and decided not to fall for their trap. With no other options, the group decides to take a break and consider other strategies. Arno starts complaining about having to sleep in the same room as the dog. Unable to stand it, Aori takes the dog to a small room next door to settle it in. While securing the dog, Aori says to it that it's a bit more comfortable here, and she thinks so too. Flashback to the previous night, Aori visited the hospital to check on Emma's father and the assistant. They sat and talked for a while. After they left, Emma's father, in a dazed state, partially woke up, though he couldn't speak or move. That night, he saw the assistant, who had been lying in the bed next to his, suddenly disappear. This was the same night that Sebi's child was taken by Marianne. The assistant had somehow managed to get out of bed, walk around, and then return to bed, plugging her oxygen tube back in. Emma's father was terrified and fainted again. From the hospital surveillance footage, it seems that Marianne had possessed the assistant that night. Back to the present, the night of the seance, the nurse came to change Emma's father's medication. When he woke up, he noticed that the assistant was once again missing from her bed. He watched in horror as she appeared behind the nurse, slowly levitating, her mouth wide open for turds, before collapsing to the ground. It turned out that Detective Samuel's seance had worked. Marianne had been summoned. However, instead of revealing herself directly, she had secretly possessed someone in the group. But who could it be? Meanwhile, Arno, feeling uncomfortable in the classroom, decided to rest in the car. After securing the dog, Aori joined him in the car. It turns out Aori had harbored feelings for Arno for years, but had never expressed them. Taking this opportunity, she confessed her feelings to him. Arno, however, was completely unresponsive, reacting with a look that said he saw her as a friend and she's trying to sleep with him. This left Aori feeling awkward and hurt. To ease the tension, she offered to go give the dog some water, but when she reached the shed, she found that the dog was gone. She quickly ran back to Arno, telling him that someone had let the dog loose. Back in the classroom, Sebi and Emma were resting in their sleeping bags while Detective Samuel sat nearby, deep in thought. Suddenly, a shadow passed by the door and the temperature sensors lit up. Sensing something was wrong, Samuel went to investigate but found nothing. Then he heard a noise coming from Sebi's sleeping bag. Carefully lifting the blanket, he found that it was just Sebi softly snoring. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him in the darkness. Suddenly, he heard Marianne's voice saying she's in Samuel's hands. Samuel opened his hand to find a mirror which reflected only his own face. Using the mirror to scan the room, he spotted Marianne hiding behind a cabinet. When he turned around, she was right in front of him, causing him to scream in terror. Sebi and Emma woke up, and Aori and Arno rushed in, saying that someone had let the dog loose. Detective Samuel yelled that Marianne was here. He had just seen her, and she had been with them the entire time since the seance began. He suspected that Marianne had possessed one of them. It felt like a game of werewolf, with one of the five being the wolf. Everyone began to defend themselves. Emma and Sebi claimed they were asleep in the room the entire time, and Arno said he had been in the car. That left Aori, who had been with the dog. As the four argued, Detective Samuel pulled out a balled gun and confessed that he was the one who let the dog loose. He revealed that Marianne had possessed him. Calmly, he pointed the gun at himself and pulled the trigger. The scene shifts to a flashback on February 17, 1617, when the church had captured Marianne and executed her by hanging. To ensure her sins were fully eradicated, the bishop ordered that her body be buried in a deep pit. A young priest was sent down to burn Marianne's corpse along with the contract she had signed with the devil. However, the priest's resolve wavered. As he prepared to set the fire, Marianne's ghost began to influence him, causing hallucinations. He heard Marianne calling his name, saw her corpse shrinking, and even witnessed a monstrous apparition. Terrified, the priest dropped the half-burned contract and scrambled back to the surface. When the bishop asked if everything had been properly destroyed, the young priest lied, saying it was all burned. In reality, a portion of the contract remained intact. The church had failed to completely deal with Marianne, leaving behind a dangerous loose end. Back to the present, Marianne had possessed Detective Samuel and forced him to shoot himself in front of the others. Emma and the group were horrified, unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, Detective Samuel's body began to move, levitating off the ground with his mouth wide open, as if he's ready to welcome any smelly turds or something was trying to emerge. It was an intensely eerie sight. The group panicked, realizing Marianne was likely leaving his body. Without hesitation, they fled, desperate not to be the next one possessed. As they ran outside, they were confronted by the dog, its eyes revealing that Marianne had now possessed it. The dog charged at them, causing the group to scatter. Sebi and Aori ran back into the classroom, while Emma hid in the car. Arno ran off in a different direction. The dog fixated on Emma, climbing onto the car's hood, staring her down. Knowing that Detective Samuel's car likely had a gun, Emma searched frantically until she found it. But when she turned around, the dog had disappeared. Summoning her courage, she stepped out of the car, only to find that Marianne had played a trick on her. She's hiding in the car's blind spot, waiting to strike. As the dog lunged at her, Emma fired several shots. Meanwhile, Sebi and Aori had barricaded themselves in the classroom, terrified. Suddenly, in the middle of the room, appeared the toy monkey that had once belonged to Aurori's sister Lucy. The toy could speak a few phrases, and from the moment they entered, it repeatedly said, "She's so pretty." Aori was deeply frightened, knowing this was Marianne's doing. As they moved towards the toy, it turned to face them. Marianne's ability to possess someone required a moment of vulnerability. Sensing this, Aori pulled Sebi under a desk, trying to block out Marianne's manipulative words. But Marianne, realizing Aori wasn't falling for it, turned her attention to Sebi, taunting him by saying his child tastes delicious as the sound of a baby crying filled the room. To prevent Sebi from being swayed, Aori handed him headphones, and they both listened to some TikTok ghost-proof music. Unfortunately, it didn't help much. Marianne, now in the form of Lucy, ripped the headphones off and appeared outside the desk, speaking of past events to trigger Aurori's memories. Finally, she offered a deal. If they convinced Emma to continue writing the novel before Tuesday, Marianne would ensure Sebi's child was returned. Marianne was playing a twisted game, trying to manipulate them into doing her bidding. Aori, however, remained strong, insisting that Marianne wasn't her sister. Marianne, in turn, revealed a long-hidden secret. On the day Lucy died in the freezer, Emma was there, watching the whole time. Aori was stunned because Emma had never told anyone about this. After Lucy died, Emma had taken the toy monkey and fled to the beach where she threw it into the sea. Now, with Marianne's manipulative twist, it seemed as though Emma had stood by and done nothing as Lucy died. As Aori and Sebi were mentally assaulted by Marianne, they suddenly heard gunshots from outside, the result of Emma shooting at the dog. Emma then entered the classroom, gun in hand, demanding to know if Aori or Sebi were possessed by Marianne. As it's revealed earlier, if someone is possessed by Marianne, they must tell the truth when asked. Emma questioned them both, and each insisted they weren't possessed. Of course, Emma herself wasn't either. Just as she pondered where Arno might be, someone pushed open the door. Turning to Arno, he fled to the beach after being chased by the dog. In a daze, he saw Tonio, who told him that Marianne had imprisoned him and would only release him if Emma continued writing the novel. He then mentioned Aori, criticizing Arno for being indifferent to her feelings. If Emma doesn't keep writing, Marianne's next target will be Aori. As they talked, Arno heard gunshots, those from Emma shooting at the dog. The The story uses this gunshot to transition between the three different plot lines. When Arno turned back, Tonio was gone. Back in the classroom, the person who entered was Arno. As usual, Emma asked if he was Marianne, and Arno denied it. It seemed none of the four were possessed. At that moment, Aori recalled Marianne's comment about Lucy's death and how Emma was present. She prepared to question Emma about it, but just then, the temperature sensor behind Arno lit up. Aori saw Marianne's figure and, in a fit of rage, started cursing, only to be violently thrown against the wall by Marianne. Seeing Aori injured, Emma quickly put a crucifix necklace around her. Sebi and Arno both urged Emma to give in to Marianne's demands and continue writing the novel. They argued that they had tried everything to fight Marianne, but she was too powerful. If Emma didn't comply, they would all die, and Sebi's child would never be found. Emma refused, knowing that if she wrote, Marianne would continue to use the story to harm more people, leading to even more deaths. But Arno was desperate, arguing that the consequences would fall on others, not them. At this moment, Emma remained clear-headed, insisting that they couldn't give in to Marianne and expressing her determination to find a way to defeat her. Aori then asked Emma if she was present when Lucy died. Emma had no choice but to admit that she was. This revelation shook Aori. She wanted to know why Emma hadn't mentioned this in the past 15 years, and if Emma locked the freezer door, stood by, and just watched Lucy die. Emma desperately explained that she didn't know Lucy was inside and had been searching for her. But by the time she found Lucy, it was too late. Sebi too began to doubt Emma, accusing her of being selfish. He argued that if she didn't follow Marianne's demands, they would all die because of her. Disheartened, Emma picked up Detective Samuel's glasses, ready to leave. But Arno, holding a gun, blocked the door, insisting that Emma must continue writing so that Tonio could return. Emma remained resolute, refusing to give in to Marianne. She explained that for years she had been running, which only resulted in more people getting hurt. Now, she was determined to stand her ground against Marianne. Moved by her words, Arno lowered his gun, showing his true character. He declared that if Marianne had to take one of them next, it should be him, as he couldn't bear to see her hurt anyone else, especially Aori, whom he confessed to loving. But as soon as he made this declaration, Marianne responded she would fulfill his wish and then took him. Arno was then taken to the top of the lighthouse, where he was tortured alone. Marianne's ghost appeared, first taking on Tonio's form to taunt Arno, revealing that Tonio had drowned the previous night. Arno's fate was sealed as he screamed in agony before dying. The scene shifts to the following morning. With friends dying one after another, Emma finally broke down. The remaining 3 survivors made it to daylight, and Emma reluctantly agreed to continue writing Marianne's story. As expected, Sebi's child was soon returned, but the story doesn't end there. Marianne insisted that Emma continue writing the novel, but writing the novel was merely a means to an end. Marianne had a much bigger plan in mind. A few nights later, Sebi visited Emma alone, thanking her for ensuring his son's safe return. He showered her with praise, reminding viewers of the romantic history between the two. Sebi then began to flirt with Emma, leading to an intimate encounter between them. At this point, you might think Sebi is cheating his wife, but there's a twist coming. The next morning, Emma woke up from another terrifying nightmare involving Marianne, only to find Sebi missing. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Emma went downstairs to find the priest standing there, holding a crucifix and reciting exorcism prayers. He immediately began a violent exorcism on Emma. Emma was utterly confused, unable to understand what was happening. The priest, however, was relentless, reciting exorcism prayers as he pursued her up the stairs to the bedroom. When the priest spotted Emma's laptop on the desk, he saw that she had continued writing Marianne's story and had even posted it online. Notably, only 432 people had liked the story, while over 310,000 disliked it. The priest, visibly alarmed, questioned Emma, asking why she had obeyed Marianne's demands and why she had submitted to her. Emma, still dazed from the beating, grabbed a gun and demanded to know what the priest's problem was, asking why he had come to her house to attack her sexy body. Claimed he hadn't laid a hand on her, let alone her body. Emma, pointing to her bleeding nose, insisted that he had hit her, but the priest calmly explained that it was the holy tap water that had caused the reaction. When Emma looked again, she realized her running nose was no longer bleeding and she wasn't injured. It became clear that Marianne had already possessed Emma, and the beating she thought she received was nothing more than a hallucination created by Marianne to manipulate her into doing certain things. Meanwhile, Aori was grieving deeply over the loss of her friends and came to the broken-down ship at the beach, where they used to hang out. She replayed the events of the morning, remembering how Emma had told her to keep the crucifix necklace around her neck. This was the same necklace Detective Samuel had gotten from his antique dealer friend and had worn ever since. Aori realized that shortly after she took off the necklace the previous night, Marianne had possessed her. Clearly, the necklace had some protective power. Aori's hand brushed over some graffiti on the ship that read, "Help," triggering a realization. Back at Emma, she was struggling to accept what was happening, that she had been possessed by Marianne. The priest explained that the only hope now was to burn Marianne's remains in her burial site. But to do that, Emma needed to reveal the location of Marianne's grave. Just as Emma was about to speak, she was overtaken by Marianne, who made her shoot the priest. Panicked, Emma tried to explain that it wasn't her who fired the gun. She couldn't understand why, after taking everything from her, Marianne still wanted more. The priest explained that Marianne wanted to use Emma's body, to speak through her voice, and to reproduce using her womb. Hearing this, Emma became frantic, begging the priest for help. But the priest admitted there was little he could do now. Emma's continued writing about Marianne had spread her evil presence across the world, entering people's dreams and growing her power. While writing the novel allowed Emma to temporarily escape Marianne's nightmares, it also spread Marianne's influence. The more people who knew about Marianne and dreamt about her, the stronger she became. Now, Marianne was so powerful that she could possess anyone at will. And today was Tuesday, the same day mentioned in the nursery rhyme. Marianne was born on a Tuesday. Emma recalled the nursery rhyme, staring at the bullet holes in the wall as memories from her childhood flooded back. She remembered playing in the backyard one afternoon when the ground began to sink, revealing a deep hole beneath. That hole was where Marianne had been buried centuries ago. Little Emma had heard voices coming from the hole, enticing her to lean closer. Marianne had said that Emma would often dream of her, and she would be with Emma in the dreams, and one day Emma would awaken her. The priest revealed that those who executed Marianne were Emma's ancestors, and Marianne had cursed their descendants, Emma and her generation. As they spoke, Emma saw Marianne's hands pointing toward the door from inside the closet. Unable to resist, Emma followed the direction to the backyard, where she found a small shed. Hearing singing from inside, Emma pushed the shed over, revealing the entrance to the hole that had been mentioned throughout the series. It's the entrance to Marianne's burial site. Voices from within the hole urged Emma to reach inside, and when she did, Marianne emerged. Emma pulled back the hood to discover that Marianne appeared as a gothic young woman, similar in age to when she was hanged, likely in her 20s. In Marianne's embrace, Emma was dragged into hell, where massive crosses loomed. Emma tried to muster her last bit of willpower to resist, but Marianne told her it was futile. She intended to take Emma to meet her husband, the demon king Beleth, also known as the Child of Darkness. As Marianne dragged Emma toward the edge of hell, Emma's physical body was completely overtaken by Marianne. The priest, realizing the severity of the situation, tried to flee downstairs but was too injured from the gunshot to escape. Marianne caught up with him at the bottom of the stairs, taunting both him and God before stabbing him in the stomach. Meanwhile, Aori, concerned for Emma's safety, arrived at her house early in the morning. At the door, she noticed the familiar leather pouch, which filled her with dread. Rushing inside, Aori urgently questioned Emma about whether she had been to the old shipwreck, as she had found fresh help carvings there. The ship was a place only the 5 of them ever visited, and now only Emma, Aori, and Sebi were left. It wasn't Sebi or Aori who made the carvings, so it had to be Emma. Aori realized this was likely Emma's desperate attempt to signal for help, while still possessing some awareness despite being under Marianne's control. Fearing for Emma's safety, Aori quickly made her way to Emma's side. Once she found Emma, she immediately asked if she was Marianne. Emma replied that she was. Marianne then threatened Aori with a knife, pushing her into a corner, ready to stab her. But in a last-ditch effort, Aori pulled out the crucifix necklace and placed it around Emma's neck. This seemed to freeze Emma in place. Meanwhile, in the hellish landscape within her mind, Emma managed to break free from Marianne's grasp. The crucifix appeared in Emma's hand, something Marianne hadn't anticipated. Regaining a bit of control, Emma urged Aori to leave quickly. The story flashes back to when the priest was 9 years old. On a piece of paper, he wrote questions to God if he really needed to pass the secondary school exams to become a priest, and if he could change the job title since he thought pastor sounds cooler and could fight evil better. If he served God with all his heart, will God grant his eternal life? Returning to the present, the priest, now gravely injured, used his blood to draw the demon king's sigil. Despite his injuries, he crawled out of the room, determined to end this nightmare once and for all. Meanwhile, Emma continued her final battle with Marianne. Marianne attempted to seduce Emma with the promise that if she came with her, Marianne would fully take over her body. The priest crawled to the edge of Marianne's burial site and grabbed a can of gasoline, pouring it into the hole. Although Aori had left earlier, she decided to return, determined to stand by Emma and face Marianne together. Marianne continued to taunt Emma, warning her that if she didn't fully embrace her, death would be her only fate. As the priest finished pouring the gasoline and prepared to set it alight, demonic hands reached up from the pit, dragging him down. Below were Marianne's corpse and the contract she signed with the devil. The priest now faced the same challenge as the young priest from centuries ago, to overcome his inner demons and burn everything to the ground. Emma, still struggling with Marianne, realized how much her friends meant to her and refused to see them put in danger because of her. She didn't want Marianne to hurt anyone else. Years ago, when she heard Marianne's whispers from the burial site, she had unknowingly forged a connection with her. Now, Emma understood that the only way to thwart Marianne's plan was to sacrifice herself. Meanwhile, Aori returned to Emma's house, only to witness Emma was about to shoot herself, with Marianne desperately trying to stop her. Just as Emma pulled the trigger, Aori rushed forward, saving her at the last second. At the same time, the priest fulfilled his vow to God, fighting evil with his last breath. In the burial site, he finally ignited the lighter, setting Marianne's remains ablaze, ensuring her spirit would perish along with them. Thanks to the priest's sacrifice, Marianne's demonic contract and corpse were destroyed, and her evil spirit dissipated. A few days later, Emma woke up in the hospital with Aori by her side. They both checked with each other, asking if either was still possessed by Marianne, but the ordeal was truly over. Emma's father had recovered and was discharged from the hospital, but there were concerns about the assistant. Though she had regained consciousness, she refused to speak, as if she had lost her soul. The doctor diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder and suggested that a change of environment might help her recover. After being discharged, Emma shared a quiet dinner with her father. She told him that she planned to take the assistant back home the next day and then start afresh by writing happier novels. The following day, Emma set off with the assistant, preparing to leave town. However, before leaving, there was one thing she needed to do: say goodbye to Sebi. When Sebi saw that Emma was safe, he was relieved. Aori had already filled him in on everything that had happened. After exchanging a brief hug rather than hormones, Emma said that they had actually had a pretty good time that night, which left Sebi puzzled. Sebi, confused, asked what she's talking about. Emma, equally perplexed, mentioned the night when he came to her house and they performed a smelly hormone yoga session. Sebi, now completely baffled, insisted he didn't know what she was talking about. He never came to her house, and they definitely didn't do anything shameless and smelly like that. Emma started to panic. If it wasn't Sebi that night, then who was it? Unsettled by the conversation, Sebi, assuming Emma might be trying to disrupt his family, left her to cool down. Back in the city, Emma couldn't stop thinking about that night. Something about it felt off, almost like the body she was with wasn't human. As it is shown earlier, the priest had mentioned that Marianne wanted to use Emma's body, to speak with her voice, and to reproduce using her womb. It turns out he was right. On her way back, Emma suddenly felt nauseous and pulled over to vomit. Something didn't feel right. She took a pregnancy test, and it confirmed she was pregnant. But whose child was it? The only person she had been with recently was Sebi, but now she knew that it wasn't really him. It seems this is set for a second season with this shocking twist at the end. The person Emma was with that night wasn't Sebi at all. It was the demon king Beleth. Marianne's plan all along was to possess Emma, have her conceive a child with the demon king, and use Emma's womb to fulfill her contract to give birth to the child of darkness. That night, Marianne used illusions to trick Emma into thinking she was with Sebi. Although the old priest's intervention disrupted Marianne's plan by destroying her corpse and the contract, the pregnancy still happened. Emma is now carrying the demon's child. From a young age, Marianne had established a connection with Emma, waiting for the right moment to strike. The seance that Caroline organized 15 years ago finally released Marianne, leading to the nightmare that Emma had been trying to escape by writing her novels. But writing was exactly what Marianne wanted her to do, spreading her story, strengthening Marianne's power, and ultimately allowing her to overpower Emma. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.